So hopefully this is going to be the last video that looks quite like this. I'm not changing my office setup or anything like that, but for the longest time, actually ever since I started this channel, I've been using my main stills camera also as my video camera, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to use one camera for both activities. And I've been delaying this purchase for a long time now. I even put an Instagram story out a couple of days ago soliciting negative feedback on the Fuji X-T3 just to try and talk myself out of the purchase and kick the can down the street a little farther and just delay this as long as possible. But I was just delaying the inevitable, and I knew I was eventually going to have to upgrade it or just get a dedicated video camera. And I went with the Fuji X-T3. I got the 10 to 24 millimeter f4, which is roughly the equivalent of a 16 to 35 on a full frame camera, which I really like that focal length. And I really made a significant upgrade to my lighting as well. I've been using this cheap $40 ring light to light these videos, and this room has horrible ambient light, and this ring light is just not powerful enough. I ended up getting the Aperture 120D and the light dome too, and that's going to be a major increase in overall lighting quality from what I'm using right now. Both of those, the camera and the lighting setup, should be here in a couple days, and I'm hoping that I'll have both set up and ready to go by next week's video. So hopefully in next week's video, you'll be able to see a significant upgrade from a production quality standpoint of these videos moving forward. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So enough of that. The purpose of this week's video is really hinges on one particular comment. It's not a comment. It's a question I got on Instagram, a direct message the other day. And the question was, a very simple question. Mark, what's the most important thing you've learned in landscape photography that would help me out or help somebody out? And I started to think about that, and I started to think immediately, like, what's the number one thing? And within just a few moments of thinking about that, I was like, I can't narrow that down to one thing. So over the next couple of days, I kept noodling on this idea, and I started to think, I was like, oh, that'd be a good idea for a video. I might be able to help out someone else as well. Might be an interesting topic. So I wrote down all my thoughts, and I came down with 11. I narrowed it down to 11 different things. And that list was too long. I wanted it to be more focused. Spent a little bit more time, got it down to 5 things. And these 5 things really have changed the way that I look at landscape photography and also just my overall enjoyment of the activity itself. And the first thing is shooting through the event. This is something that took me a year or so to learn, but shooting through the event. And what the event is either sunrise or sunset. Those are the most common times for landscape photography. And when I first started out, I remember I checked the sunrise time. So if it's 7:24, I plan on getting there at 7. It'll give me time to get there and get set up and pop off a couple exposures as the sun's rising, and then I'd be done, or maybe go to another location and try a different composition. But shooting through the actual event it really speaks to taking more images than you think you'll ever need to capture the entire event, because it's impossible to time the peak. And what I mean by the peak is the peak moment where the light's the best. The light's the softest, the warmest. It's coming up, from the side at the perfect angle, lighting up whatever it is you're shooting. Or the peak moment where the colors in the sky are the most vibrant. That's super difficult, if not impossible, to time exactly when that's going to be. And I found the best way to do that is to shoot the entire event. And this is what a typical shoot looks like for me once I get home from the trip. Just tons of images, the pretty much the same composition over and over. The only real difference has to do with just minor settings adjustments or maybe just minor tweaks to the overall composition. But this is a Mesa Arch in Canyonlands National Park. Very iconic image. And what the typical shot is the sun rises here and it bounces light off of the canyon wall down below, and it lights up the underneath of the arch here. But on a day like today, it was pretty cloudy on the horizon. It didn't look like we were going to get that type of an image. So I ended up just shooting exposure after exposure, and I'm just flipping through these all real fast right now. And I ended up capturing these cool light rays coming through. And then it started to dissipate, and that was really it. And I thought the light rays were kind of cool, something a little bit unique from this location, because this location is shot to death. And I don't see a lot of images with those light rays coming through. So I was like, all right, maybe that's something cool. Packed up my camera, packed up my tripod, and I left. And I wasn't 30 feet away. And I started to hear some of the other photographers grumbling about it's happening or the light's coming or something like that. And I looked back, and I see that the light is starting to bounce up and light up or illuminate the underneath of the arch. So I run back and I get set up again, and just a few moments later, the light rays start to come back through and the entire arch starts to light up. And I think this is the image that I liked the best right here, maybe right through, I think it was this one here. But you can see it lit up the entire arch all through here, got some light down here, and I got all the light rays here. And if I wouldn't have come back, I would have missed everything that I came here for. And that's what I mean, shoot through the entire event, because you never know what's going to happen. During the sunrise or sunset, every single moment something's changing. The light's changing, the color in the sky is changing every single moment. So if you just capture the entire thing, I mean, most of us aren't shooting film. Most of us we're shooting digital. You're not paying per click or per exposure. So just capture as much information as you possibly can. And then when you get home, then you can go through it all and figure out exactly which one is the keeper. And here's another example of this. As you can see, I took a ton of images from Mesa Arch, but this is Botany Bay in South Carolina. Just cool beach with these trees just sticking right out of the shoreline here, but just capturing just tons of images this over and over and over and over again, because you never know exactly which one is going to be the keeper. So if you capture it all, you'll have it all, and then when you get home, you'll be able to go through exactly which one, and you'll be able to identify, this is the image here that had the best light, or this is the image that had the most vibrant color in the sky, and that'll be your keeper. So that's something that I found to be insanely beneficial to my photography. Now, the second thing is just preparing. Preparation is, and I think this is kind of a, not undervalued, but I think sometimes this is kind of dismissed a little bit. But for me, preparation is everything. And I firmly believe that you get out what you put in anything in life. But definitely when it comes to landscape photography, and certainly if you're going to a location that you've never been to before, there's so many ways that we can prepare online today. It's really insane. From Google Earth, I spend so much time on Google Earth, especially if I'm going to a location that I've never been to before, just scouting out the entire area, scouting out footpaths of how I'm going to get to certain points, trying to figure out potentially what a composition will be, or what area of that location that I want to try and set up, because the sun's rising over here and I want to be over here on this side, and checking weather and sunset times and sunrise times and the predicted cloud cover. Are there going to be high clouds, medium clouds, or low clouds? There's just so many different ways to prepare for a shoot. And I found so much such a higher level of success when I spend a lot of time preparing for a shoot. And I'm not talking about spending hours and hours and hours and hours, but you can get a lot accomplished in just probably 15 or maybe 30 minutes of preparation before a shoot, just to make sure that the weather conditions are going to be right, or the predicted weather is going to be right, and that the sun is rising or setting in a certain location that's good for this particular shot that you're looking for, and that you're comfortable with the area. You're not going to get lost trying to get to where you're going to go, because there is nothing worse than getting to a location and the sun's rising in like 30 or 45 minutes and you're lost, or you can't find the composition that you're looking for, because this is inevitably the first time you've seen anything about this area because you didn't do any research online. So just using the tools that we all have at our disposal, like Google Earth, or apps like Light Track, or Clear Outside to look at cloud cover. I made a video about some of the apps that I use, and I'll link it above here if you want to take a look at that. But those are just some of the amazing tools that we can use just to become better prepared, just to put ourselves in a position for success when we go on these shoots. And I think that if you spend that time preparing, that the odds are much higher that you're going to walk away with an image that you're happier with. Now, the third thing has to do with arriving early and staying late. And this kind of has a little bit to do with the first item as well. So when I first started out, I remember if I was going to do a sunrise shoot somewhere, I'd look at my phone and see, okay, the sun's going to rise at 7:32 a.m. So if I get there at 7, I should be good. And I would do that, and I'd get on location, I'd get all set up, and I'd have 10 minutes to spare before the sun rises. It seemed fine to me. What I noticed over time is that, there's really two reasons why we shoot sunrise and sunset. One is because you get that nice, warm, soft side light from the sun either breaching the horizon or the sun falling below the horizon. And the second reason is because you get explosive color in the sky during sunset and sunrise. So those are the two main reasons. But a lot of times, many times, the best color in the sky comes well before the sun actually rises above the horizon or drops below the horizon. Or I'm sorry, when it drops below the horizon, the best color is going to come after that. So, and that's that blue hour you hear people talking about. The time before the sun rises and the time after the sun sets. So getting to your location early. So if the sun's rising around 7:30, try and get there at 6. Give yourself plenty of time to get there, get set up, not be rushed around. Really refine your composition and get everything ready. That way, when it's 30 minutes or 40 minutes before the sun actually rises, you can start taking your exposures, because you'd be surprised, you're going to really get a lot of color in your sky. Or if you're set up for a sunset shoot, get there before the sun actually sets. Shoot through the sunset, but don't leave once the sun sets, because that's when the magic really probably is going to start happening. Keep on shooting, because that's when a lot of times you'll get that beautiful, soft blue ambient light of the blue hour. And you also get nice residual light residual color in the clouds as well. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. And I got a good example of that here as well. So I know I've showed the end image of this in a couple of videos not too long ago, but this image right here was taken, I don't know, maybe easily 30 to 40 minutes before the sun actually rises. But if I start flipping through here, you can see how quick the color comes. So I'm going to flip through this entire series, and then the color goes away. So the sun rises, and then all of it, the color disappears from the clouds. So, and I think this was the final image right here that I went with. Yeah, right here was the final image, because it had all the color all the way up here in the sky, all the way back through here. This was the image where all of the colors were the most vibrant in the sky. And I even got some nice side light on the actual lighthouse here as well. But all of this occurred well in advance of the sun actually rising. And then once the sun rose, you can see what happens to the color. That's what we're left with. The sun's fully up right here. It was a very cloudy day. There was a lot of high clouds. But just being there early or staying late, that's something that I found insanely helpful for my shoots, because not only are you going to capture your sunrise, you're going to capture your sunset, but you're going to get the event that's the blue hour that's going to occur before sunrise and the blue hour that's going to occur after sunset. So definitely make sure you hang around for those. Now, the fourth thing has to do with understanding your camera, knowing your gear, specifically how to manipulate the exposure triangle. And I flashed this infographic a few weeks ago in a video, and this is a great depiction of the exposure triangle, but knowing how to affect the exposure triangle in your camera. So knowing how to make changes to your aperture, to your shutter speed, to your ISO. You don't have to be shooting in manual mode. You could be shooting in aperture priority. The light meters in cameras today are absolutely fantastic. In aperture priority mode, there is nothing wrong with that. That way you can just set your aperture and let your camera figure out everything else. And if that's the route you want to go, just make sure you're comfortable with how to put your camera in aperture priority, how to adjust the aperture. And if you're in manual mode, make sure you're super comfortable with how to change the aperture, how to change the ISO, how to change the shutter speed. And practice, when you're on location, that's the time that you don't want to be fussing around with settings. You want to make sure you're comfortable before then. I used to practice in my living room or my backyard, to set up the tripod and put my camera on it and take pictures of my fence in my backyard. And I would put it in manual mode and start making changes to your aperture, to your shutter speed, to your ISO, and see what it does to the overall exposure of your image. And that was how I really started to fully grasp the exposure triangle and how changing the aperture affects the image, or changing the shutter speed affects the image or the ISO, and just seeing what that change will do to the overall exposure of your photograph was wildly beneficial for me. So making sure that you're very familiar with the exposure triangle and how to make those changes to impact that in camera is definitely something you want to have a good grasp on before you get on location, because like I said, that's not when you want to start fumbling with settings. I know we're not photographing fast-moving subjects, race cars or rocket ships or anything like that. We're generally photographing things that are pretty stagnant. Mountains and trees, they're not moving, they're not going anywhere. But the light, that's what moves fast. And when the light is popping off and the sky's exploding with color, It is not going to last long. And if you're fumbling around with settings and your palms are sweating, you're nervous, that is not a good situation to be in. And I've been in that situation time and time again. So get comfortable with your camera and make sure you're comfortable with those settings before you get on location. Now, the fifth thing, and this is probably the most important thing, and that is just to slow down and relax. Be patient. This has to do with really all of the other 4 things that I learned as well too, because all of those things really lead up to putting yourself in a position to enjoy what you're doing. If you arrive early, if you shoot through the event, if you're prepared, if you know your camera gear, you're going to enjoy the overall experience that much better. And there's nothing better to me than the moment when you're on location, the weather's right, you're all set up, you love your composition, everything is dialed in, there's literally nothing else for you to do except wait for the color to come, to wait for the light to come. And just knowing that feeling that everything's ready to go, and there's nothing for you to do, you just sit there and wait, listen to the sounds around you, and just get ready for the moment that you're about to witness, because it's only going to happen one time. That exact moment, that sunrise, that sunset will never ever happen again, and you're about to capture it, and that's a super cool feeling. I got goosebumps just talking about it, just being able to be there for that moment. So just relax and slow down and enjoy it. I talk to a lot of people that are into landscape photographers and a lot of professional landscape photographers, and one common theme that we all have is that one of the main reasons we do this is not because we just only love the great outdoors or that we only love pictures of mountains and trees, but it's the process. It's that slow, meditative, relaxing process of just being outside and capturing something that's never going to happen again. That's a very therapeutic thing. So just slowing down, be patient, and don't get so fixated on the end result, which is the image. Just enjoy the overall process. So those are the 5 things that have really changed the way that I look at landscape photography. And I hope that you were able to get at least a couple pieces of helpful information out of that you could possibly apply to your landscape photography shoots moving forward. If you enjoyed this week's video, if you could give it a thumbs up, it definitely helps the channel out. And if you have any questions, as always, please leave them in the comment section below, and I guarantee I will get back in touch with you. And of course, I really appreciate you all watching this week's video, and I'll see you next week. Bye.